Greetings and peace. I would like to start this with Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Peace be with you and yours. And Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. In the name of Allah, the Beneficent, the Most Merciful. Today I would like to do a comparative study video presentation on the Greek philosopher Plotinus, Neoplatonism, Greek philosophy, ancient Egypt, and Sufism. So without further ado, I hope you enjoy. And again, I represent myself only under free speech for entertainment, education, and nonprofit purposes. This presentation is dedicated to my friend, Brother Lucas, whose commitment to truth, wisdom, and the deeper currents of philosophy and spirituality has inspired this work, as he continues to uplift and serve fallen humanity in his own way. The following exploration seeks to trace the profound connections between Plotinus, Islam, and Sufism, revealing their shared intellectual heritage and the true Eastern origins of what has often been misinterpreted as purely Western traditions. May this serve as a tribute to the unity of knowledge and the continuity of human search for the divine. In this presentation, we will explore the teachings of Plotinus, the central figure of Neoplatonism, and their deep correlations with the mystical traditions of Islam, especially Sufism, far from being separate or disconnected systems. Neoplatonism and Sufism share common intellectual and spiritual roots. Both traditions affirm the ultimate unity of all existence, the ascent of the soul towards its divine source, and the transformative journey of inner purification. This study aims to demonstrate how these parallels are not coincidental but are a part of an intellectual continuum rooted in Egypt, Persia, and other Eastern traditions, long before their adoption in the West. Now we look at Plotinus, who lived in the 3rd century Common Era CE, and articulated a philosophy centered on the concept of quote-unquote the One, the ultimate source of all existence. For Plotinus, the material world is but a shadow of a higher, more perfect reality. Human beings as souls embodied in matter must strive to transcend the material condition and return to their source. His book, or his teachings, his Enneads, describes a system where the soul purifies itself through contemplation, detachment, and the cultivation of virtue. This ascent is not merely intellectual, but mystical, culminating in union with the One. These teachings echo throughout the later traditions of Islamic philosophy and Sufism. For Plotinus, the human soul originates from the divine but becomes entangled in the world of matter. Life's true purpose is to return to the divine realm through spiritual discipline and contemplation. This journey is one of ascent, requiring detachment from material desires and a focus on the eternal realities. The language of purification, remembrance, and ascent resonates strongly with later Sufi teachings, where the journey of the seeker, the salik, the traveling man or woman, follows a similar pattern, renouncing their ego, remembering God, and ascending spiritually towards divine union. This parallel suggests that the Neoplatonic vision was not confined to Greece but profoundly shaped the Islamic mystical worldview. At the heart of Plotinus' thought is quote-unquote the One, a reality beyond being, intellect, and description. The One is the source of all, overflowing in a hierarchy of emanations. From the One proceeds intellect, from intellect proceeds soul, and from soul proceeds the material world. All reality is thus an emanation of divine unity. This vision finds striking resonance with the Islamic theology, particularly the doctrine of Tawheed, the oneness of God, or what some groups call belief in a supreme being. Sufis, like Plotinus, saw multiplicity as ultimately illusory, and urging seekers to recognize the divine unity underlying all existence. Now, Sheikh Ibn al-Arabi's later doctrine of the Wahdat al-Wujud, the unity of being, can be seen as a continuation of this metaphysical perspective. Plotinus stressed that intellectual reasoning alone is insufficient to grasp the divine. True knowledge comes from a higher form of vision. often described as mystical union. This knowledge transcends discursive thought, requiring purification and illumination of the soul. In this regard, Plotinus prefigures the Islamic Sufi emphasis on marifa, a direct experiential knowledge of God that surpasses rational theology. For both Plotinus and the Sufis, ultimate truth is attained not through external argument, but through inner transformation and divine unveiling. Although Plotinus is often portrayed as a Greek philosopher, he himself was born in Egypt, and his thought was deeply influenced by the intellectual and spiritual traditions of Alexandria. The city was a melting pot of Greek, Egyptian, Jewish, and Near Eastern traditions. Scholars such as Professor George G.M. James, who was also a Freemason, in Stolen Legacy, his book, have argued that what is often called Greek philosophy is in fact derived from the Egyptian mystery schools, and I have done a video on George G.M. James's Stolen Legacy book. Thus, Neoplatonism should be understood not only as a purely Western invention, but as a synthesis, syncretic, built on profound Eastern and African foundations. So it's not about what came first or who gets credit for what. It's about making sure that the correct honor is given to the right people. And the Western mystery traditions or the esoteric traditions, occult fraternities, secret societies, they never give credit to the East. So, look, I'm covering Greek philosophy here, right? But I'm making sure I'm giving correct to the East as well, as all of the fraternities, secret societies, religions all originate from the Near East, right? Specifically, the colonized term of the Middle East that we see today. So that's exactly what it is that we're dealing with. See, even in the Sufi tradition, we're taught that Islam has existed since time immemorial, and how even the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, says that I was a prophet 70,000 years before Adam was created, when Adam was stuck between clay and water. So that system is of Islam, what Allah tells us in the Holy Quran, right? In the 5th surah, that now I have corrected and perfected your religion, as this was a religion being revealed in stages and degrees. So from ancient Sumerians, ancient Egypt, it was all Islam being unveiled from that esoteric perspective. So that's exactly what it is. Islam is not a 6th century religion. It has existed since time immemorial, and that's why in my work I'm making sure that the East gets the credit that it deserves. Now, in his groundbreaking work of Stolen Legacy, George G.M. James, right, the Freemason and professor who was actually, I believe, killed for writing this book, argued that much of Greek philosophy was appropriated from ancient Egyptian teachings. According to James, figures such as Plato, Aristotle, and Plotinus built upon wisdom long preserved in Egyptian temples and mystery traditions. This thesis challenges Eurocentric narratives that separate Neoplatonism from Africa and the East, highlighting instead the continuity between Egyptian religious philosophy and later traditions like Neoplatonism, Islamic mysticism, and Sufism. By situating Plotinus within this broader heritage, we uncover a truer picture of intellectual history. And I'll put the link in the description below of the video that I've done on George G.M. James's book, The Stolen Legacy, so you can review that at your convenience and leisure. Alexandria was not only the birthplace of Plotinus, but also the greatest intellectual hub of the Hellenistic world. It was here that Egyptian spirituality, Greek philosophy, Jewish mysticism, and Near Eastern traditions converged. The Platonic Academy, Hermetic text, and Egyptian priestly wisdom all circulated within this environment. As such, Neoplatonism cannot be understood apart from this cosmopolitan exchange of ideas. This intellectual melting pot provided the framework through which Egyptian and Eastern ideas entered Western philosophy and later, subsequently, Islamic thought. Now, also to note, that Neoplatonism was shaped not only by Greek philosophy, but also by Persian, Indian, and Egyptian ideas. And if you look at the Hindu philosophy of ancient India known as Samkhya, Samkhya, it predates Neoplatonism and talks about the same exact things that we're discussing here. Now, the hierarchical cosmology, right, of emanation resembles Persian Zoroastrian concepts, while the mystical ascent of the soul bears similarities to Indian Vedantic traditions. Egyptian metaphysics provided the emphasis on divine unity and immortality of the soul. Rather than being an isolated Western phenomena, Neoplatonism represents the synthesis of diverse Eastern traditions into a philosophical system that will later deeply influence Islam and Sufism. With the rise of Islam in the 7th century, scholars encountered the works of Plotinus and other Neoplatonists through Syriac and Arabic translations. The so-called theology of Aristotle, actually a modified version of Plotinus's Enneads, circulated widely among early Muslim thinkers, and figures such as Al-Kindi, Al-Farabi, and Avicenna Ibn Sina drew upon these Neoplatonic ideas, integrating them into Islamic philosophy, falsafa. This exchange demonstrates that Neoplatonism was never a purely Western possession, but was absorbed and transformed within the Islamic intellectual tradition. Sufism, tasawwuf, the mystical path of Islam, emphasizes tawheed, the oneness of God, and also the belief in a supreme being, in some traditions, as its central teaching. Now, Sufis such as Junaid and later Ibn Arabi described reality as a unified whole where multiplicity dissolves into divine presence. This doctrine resonates deeply with Plotinus's vision of the One and the emanation of all things from it. The Sufi language of annihilation, fana, and the subsistence in God, baka, mirrors the Plotinian ascent of the soul returning to its divine source. These parallels indicate not imitation but a shared intellectual heritage, which should be celebrated. And those in the Western esoteric traditions who never give the East any credit, what else there needs to be said for these people? Both Plotinus and the Sufis stressed aestheticism as the path to spiritual ascent. Plotinus urged the purification of the soul through detachment from material pleasures and cultivation of inner virtues. Similarly, Sufis advocated practices of fasting, remembrance, meditation, and service to others to purify the heart. In both systems, the soul's journey is inward, away from the distractions of the world, toward the eternal reality of the divine. This shared emphasis reveals the deep resonance between Neoplatonism and Sufism. The goal of both Plotinus and Sufism is mystical union. For Plotinus, this is described as the soul's return to the One, an ineffable experience beyond words. In Sufism, this is the state of fana fi Allah, the annihilation of the ego in God, followed by baka, enduring in divine presence. Both traditions describe this union as a transformative encounter that surpasses intellect and language. The experiential similarity between these traditions underscores their shared lineage in Eastern mystical thought. Light is a central symbol in both Plotinus's philosophy and Sufism. Plotinus often spoke of the One as the source of light from which all reality emanates, while Sufi poets and thinkers described God as the light of the heavens and the earth, echoing the Quranic verse of light, Surah 24, verse 35, chapter 24, verse 35. The imagery of the soul as a light seeking to return to its source is common to both traditions. This shared symbolism highlights the universality of mystical experiences across cultures and demonstrates the Eastern roots of Neoplatonism and Sufism alike. Islamic philosophers such as Al-Farabi and Avicenna Ibn Sina played a key role in integrating Neoplatonic ideas into Islamic philosophy. Avicenna's metaphysics of emanation, his theory of the active intellect, and his descriptions of the soul's ascent all reflect Plotinian influence. These thinkers were not mere transmitters of Greek thought, but developed creative syntheses that linked Neoplatonism with Quranic revelation and Islamic theology. This fusion demonstrates the profound compatibility of Neoplatonic and Islamic ideas. Ibn Arabi, one of the greatest Sufi masters, articulated the doctrine of the Wahdat al-Wujud, the unity of being, which parallels Plotinus' vision of the One as the source of all existence. Ibn Arabi's mystical writings describe the cosmos as a manifestation of divine reality, in which the seeker perceives the unity underlying apparent diversity. Though separated by centuries, Ibn Arabi and Plotinus converge on the insight that ultimate truth is a unified, ineffable reality that transcends conceptual thought, where the Sufis say that Allah is the only reality, La ilaha illallah, there is no God but God, and how Plotinus refers to this source as the One. Modern scholarship often presents Neoplatonism and Sufism as isolated traditions, the former as a Greek invention and the latter as a uniquely Islamic development. This narrative overlooks their shared Eastern heritage and the Egyptian and Persian influences that shaped them both. By recovering these connections, we resist Eurocentric distortions and affirm the continuity of wisdom traditions that span Africa, the Middle East, and Asia. George G.M. James's Stolen Legacy reminds us that the intellectual treasures of humanity cannot be claimed as the invention of one civilization alone. Tracing the historical and philosophical continuities reveal a clear pattern. From the spiritual teachings of Egypt to the synthesis of Neoplatonism in Alexandria, to their adoption by early Islamic thinkers, and finally to their flowering in Sufi mysticism. This genealogy underscores the deep unity of human spiritual striving. Neoplatonism and Sufism are not separate or derivative traditions, but branches of a single ancient tree, a wisdom that continues to nourish seekers of truth across cultures and ages. The study of Plotinus, Islam, and Sufism reminds us of the interconnectedness of human traditions and the futility of dividing East and West into rigid categories. In an age marked by cultural conflict and misunderstanding, recognizing these shared roots offers a path towards dialogue, reconciliation, and spiritual renewal. Sufism and Neoplatonism both teach that the soul's journey is toward unity, love, and transcendence, a message as urgent today as it was in antiquity, and why it matters today. Here are the references that I recommend that you check out in terms of further studies on this, and also I'll put the link in the description below for the video that I did on George G.M. James's book, Stolen Legacy. Thank you so much. I hope you all benefited from this work. If any questions or comments, please email me at salmansheikh911@gmail.com. And of course, all the images, information, and all of the stuff in my videos is all for the purpose of nonprofit, education, and awareness, which is protected under the copyright laws of fair use. Thank you so much. All rights reserved.